Good morning and welcome to the Legit Real Estate Podcast. I am TJ Chofi. I'm here as always with Holly. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning.
We have a special guest today. Very excited. Kenny Tessitore from Loan Depot is with us. This is good because I'm sure you get sick of just talking to me every week, Holly.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's always good to
You
have a
know,
guest.
imagine being my wife every day, all day.
I'm already married to an Italian, so I don't know. I,
You know, Kenny is surrounded by Italians right now too, which is good for you.
yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Kenny,
All
tell
about
us
it.
a little bit what's going on. What's going on in your world?
What's going on in my world? It's busy as heck. It's crazy in the lending world right now, honestly. A lot of things that are shifting, a lot of the market's normalizing. We're ramping up for a huge year. I'm really excited for 2025, to be honest with you. I can't wait to see how the year ends as well as what we experience during. We're helping a lot of families in different ways that we didn't anticipate being the way the market was going to go. But it's exciting to be able to help those people and find solutions for whatever they're going through. But yeah,
That's awesome.
pretty good. Everything's busy. It's great.
Overwhelming sense of optimism in our world.
Definitely, yeah.
There is. For those of us who survived, because I saw the other day that 75% of realtors nationwide did not sell one property last year, 2024. So
I believe.
if that's happening in our world, I'd imagine it's similar in your world. And then we just had license renewals, and a huge percentage of people just decided that this isn't the business for them. And we see that sometimes when everything's going good and you feel like you have control over your paychecks, when you feel like there's just a buyer and seller on every phone call, people start jumping into our business, right? Because
Right.
that's what every realtor in the country, not Holly and I, but they start leasing Mercedes, and everyone's like, well, the money is easy in that world. And then when it hits the fan like it did in 2023, 2024, those same people don't have the $800 to renew their license, which always trips me up a little bit. So I think there's an overwhelming sense of optimism, and I'm glad you're feeling it on your end because we sure are on our end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're absolutely correct. I feel like whenever there's a giant market shift, there's a mass exodus on both the lending and the realtor side. I mean, there was a news article like maybe a few weeks ago, 30,000 LOs didn't come back to the business, which I don't mind being the reality. I know that speaks volumes of like where lending is right now. But for me, I look at it as like the herd is moving in one direction. I'm going to move in the complete opposite. And there's more opportunity for me to create more market share for myself and my colleagues. I mean, you folks as well. So it's sad to see when the market does shift like that, but it's also exciting to see that there's more opportunity for those of us that can learn to dance in the storm, if you will.
You know what I find also is the ones that leave are not the ones that are in business. They're the ones that work at the job of being in real estate. Like they're not in a business. They don't have a business plan. They're just kind of doing a transaction or two a year, and it doesn't make it worth it because that transaction doesn't come. And but what you find is if you look at a pie chart of all the sales in our area, like 70% of the houses will still go to people who only do one or two deals a year. And to get those people out of the business, the houses are still going to sell. The people are still going to list. The consumer doesn't really care who's in business, who isn't.
Right.
That's still the same amount of, there's still, the pie's even bigger, but there's less people taking a bite out of it. So I think it's cool. But Holly, that's not what we do on this show. We don't do market analysis here, do we?
No, we don't. We want all of your dirty, grimy, scary, horrible stories. So tell us
So
all
I
the
have,
good stuff.
Let's
I've
hear
got
the
one
big
to kick us
story
off.
that.
You guys want to hear some crazy wild?
I
So
do.
I don't know if you guys caught this story in the news. It was in like June of last year, and I think it was titled like the Harvard morgue scandal, if you will. And it was crazy to me to like, this was not even on my radar. Like I wasn't even like paying attention to this, but I had like, we get applications all the time, and without getting into too many details, like buyer specific or anything like that, one application did come across my desk, and it was for this particular person. It was the husband, and he was trying to get a loan for to buy a house, right? And he was telling me his story. I was doing like the buyer interview, and I'm like, oh, like, are you gonna have a co-buyer? Are you gonna have this, that, and the other thing? And he goes, well, my significant other is there's like just too much bad press around us right now. And I'm like, I've never really that doesn't come up in a buyer interview at all. So I was like, too much bad press. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so I did a little Googling and I noticed the name. And then all of a sudden, this thing came up. It was the morgue Harvard scandal, where I guess the director of the Harvard morgue for Harvard Medical, I suppose, was in cahoots with these other people. And they were literally selling body parts
Oh
all over
my
the country.
God.
No, yeah, no, this is very, very real. And I was like just taken back, and I'm like, I don't feel personally comfortable like going through, because I really don't know what's going on in your personal life right now. Like, I'll give you like loan options, but I low key like just don't want to be a part of this transaction because I really don't know about the fallout or how it's going to happen for you folks. But they reached out to me early on when this all was happening, and I'm like watching these news stories like come to be, and like they were like showing up like the things that followed were incredible, like this whole like gray area of like this underground like body part selling thing that like goes around this country like all the time, and like you really never hear about it. But
That's
and I guess this
insane.
has been like an ongoing thing, and these people were selling like decapitated heads, legs, arms, and like there's like this huge buyer market out there for like this sort of thing. But like we get
Mhm.
all sorts of crazy apps, and I'm sure that you guys can relate on that same note of like you get all sorts of different characters in real estate when
That's
working with the
not
public in
that.
general,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
not
just
that.
it's pretty insane, right?
That's so crazy. It's funny because
Imagine
I
the
listened.
underwriting. Imagine underwriting come back with all kinds of conditions.
No, I know,
Like
right? Well,
Oh
that.
I
God.
mean, without getting into the specifics, I mean the husband had a pretty like steady like normal job or whatever, and so like we easily could help him. But ultimately, I was just like, I kind of want to take a step back because I really don't know what's going to happen with you folks right now. But like, I'm here for as a resource if you need me. But oh my gosh, I was like, who are these people? Like, I can't even.
But that
I don't
is
even
a
know if I
big
want to do
thing.
this.
I actually there's a podcast that I listen to very morbid podcasts, and
Yeah,
a
same.
couple of the podcasts talk about like these things because there is a whole underground market for all the body parts. Like some of it is for medical needs and whatnot. Way
Totally.
back in the day, there was grave robbery and stuff like that. That's how they did it. Now,
Yep.
but the one I literally just listened to one yesterday where there was a guy that was running a funeral home and like a crematorium, and he was making, I think it was like $6,000 a month just by pulling the gold teeth out of the bodies and selling the
Oh,
gold
get
teeth.
out.
I was just
No
like,
way.
but it's insane. That's crazy though that that came across your desk.
Like
Speaking of grave robbers, I ran into this the other day. Have you guys ever heard the expression "saved by the bell"?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know
yeah,
where
I
that
know.
comes from?
I do.
I do too.
Yes.
Yep.
I
So isn't
do.
that wild? Like, just for like any of the listeners, like, so I guess back in the day, because there were like, you sometimes when they admitted you as like deceased, they didn't really like know, so that they would have like a little bell in the coffin or something like that, and you would ring it if in fact you weren't like totally dead. Like, I was
Yep.
just, that's so funny. Like, I always thought it was like Saved by the Bell, like, you know, the TV show when we were kids or
Yep.
whatever, but like
With
totally
Mhm.
different, absolutely different.
That's
AC
Yeah,
Slater
nuts.
looks exactly the same, and it's like 45 years later.
right.
Like, what's
So
that guy? That,
Yeah.
what is what is he do? I don't look the same as I did 5 years ago. My hair's gray. This guy looks like he's 20 years old.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
he looks fantastic.
Let me ask you this, Kenny. Speaking of that, but not exactly that. What do you do if you're taking a loan application and like you kind of know this guy's about to go to jail? Like, has that ever come across?
well, I mean, you do ask the like specific like questions like around like, do you have any like bankruptcies? Do you have any foreclosures? Do you have any like there's so many different variables that come into play when we're doing lending. Like, do you have any divorces? Do you have any separate maintenance, like child support? Like, you ask all these different things. Do you have any like unresolved law disputes of things that could affect the end all be all lending? And like, to our underwriters are extraordinarily thorough. I don't know what would have necessarily came up in this particular scenario, but by that same token, I mean, they do background checks on like pretty much everybody, so I'm sure something would have came up. But the way that we were doing that particular person's loan, like the we didn't put the significant other as a co-buyer, so I really don't know if it would have came up. But because he wasn't being indicted, the significant other was. So I really don't know if it would have came up. But I mean, you do ask a lot of the questions to weed out um, things that could kill a deal, essentially, or just like really impact people's liabilities
Like if I
overall.
ever had to do time, right? So I don't generally break the law, but in the event that I was going to go away for a significant amount of time, I do have good credit and good income on my taxes, right? So what if I went and borrowed as much as I could, and then knowing damn well I'm going to be in Cranston for the foreseeable future at the old ACI. That way my wife and kids could have a house they didn't have to pay for until you guys foreclosed. I wonder, I mean, if you're a
Well,
criminal,
you know
you're
the
a criminal.
foreclosure
Right?
process. I mean, it's can be a quick turnaround time and like lengthy one depending on how you look at it. But by that same note, if the borrower isn't paying their mortgage on time or somebody isn't footing that bill while they're incarcerated, I mean, essentially it would go into foreclosure. So
Yeah, after my wife banked a couple of years worth of paychecks and fought it out, because sometimes those foreclosures are not quick.
no, right. Yeah, no, I'm
So
dealing with one right now, and like these people defaulted on their loan like a hot second ago, because it was like things were hung up in probate. People didn't know who was paying what. Things just got like completely like carried along for a very, very, very long time. I'm like shook at that like it didn't actually go into foreclosure, but we're saving the deal, which is great. But like, yeah, no, sometimes those things can be drawn out like crazy.
I met with sellers before that are like, okay, I have to sell or I'm going to lose it.
Right.
And okay, well, how far behind are you on your mortgage? Because I'm trying to come up with a payoff in my head, right? Now,
Yep.
if they're current, it's easy to come up with the payoff. Just give me your bill. But if you're behind, once the fees and the interest start to accrue, like I need something in writing. Anyway, and they'll be like, oh, we haven't paid our mortgage in 10 months.
Right.
10 months.
Little late.
You're still here. I'm scared if I pay on the 16th, someone's going to come bang my door down. But that's definitely not the way it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like banks, I mean, they really don't want to go into the foreclosure process and lose out anyways. They'd much rather somebody like come up with a scenario or a solution to the problem so that they can keep the asset and then they can keep on paying out the mortgage as normal because it's more profitable to them way versus a payoff. But from where I'm sitting, like, yeah, they can be lengthy, but you don't want to put yourself in that position, especially if you're incarcerated and you know you're about to be or something like that. But yeah, no, this was a great story though. Really gripping material on that one. It was
Oh my
insane.
God.
Yeah, I like didn't. It's one of those scenarios where you want to help somebody, but you're like, I don't know if I want to go down this rabbit hole. And I'm sure, like, not to paint this like very like awful picture of like we don't help people when they need it. Like that's definitely not the case. But like with people that are in very rare scenarios like this, like I just don't want. My position was I kind of took a little bit of a step back, but I said to the guy, "Hey, listen, I don't mind being a resource for you. If you have any questions, like don't hesitate to reach out." But ultimately, like he ended up deciding to go with another lender, which I was very, 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 very relieved by. I don't even know if they ended up getting the house, but just because you're pre-approved doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. But you want to, yeah, I felt bad and awkward about it, but I was like, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to happen to you folks. And yeah, the court proceedings just like went crazy,
I'm
super
gonna have to
awkward.
Google that later. Oh my
No,
God.
do it. It's insane. Yeah.
I have so much to do today, and now I'm not going to do almost any of it because I'm gonna jump into this rabbit hole. I'm gonna learn about body parts for sale. Let's see
Yeah,
what we're
right.
doing.
It was wild. I was just like, this is probably the most awkward app I've ever taken. Like initially it wasn't that bad, but then I was like, I need to Google this. Like what is going on in this person's life? Like naturally your curiosity just goes through the roof.
That's
You
insane.
know what I'm interested in? I'm interested in dumb things that buyers have done in the process that blew up their own home purchase. Do you have anything good in that area?
Yeah, I mean, other than the normal ones where you're like, are you joking? Like they'll people will lose their jobs and say nothing. And you're
No,
just like, can you like be a little bit more forthcoming? Well, I thought it would kill the deal. Yeah, no, of course it'll kill the deal, but like let's get ahead of that. Like talk to me about it. Like I don't care what goes down, but just tell me. Do you know what I mean? So we can come up with a solution together to fix it. Like people will take out like credit cards. They'll stop what um two people had amazing jobs and they both decided to go back to school. Like, good for you, awesome. But like, where is your income gonna go? Like, we're qualifying you on X, and now all of a sudden, like that's cut in half. Like, what do you want me to do with that? So like, people do some crazy things. And like, I literally try to educate the borrowers as much as humanly possible. Like from jump of like, here's all the do's and don'ts of what you're supposed to be doing. Like, don't go out and buy a ton of new furniture because like if you have like these giant expenses popping up in people's bank statements, like you have to an underwriter is going to be like, what is this for? You know what I mean? So
these damn
there's all sorts of different
commercials
things.
You've seen them, Holly, you've seen them too, where it's no interest for a year, like no money down, no interest for a year. And, they'll approve you for $15,000 to furnish a house.
Right.
Well, now that's a debt that you didn't have when you filled out the application. How many times I've warned people about that because it sounds too good to be true. It's like no money down, no for a year. Yeah. Okay. But you still have the debt.
Or look, I'm going to buy a house, so I'm going to go buy all the furniture and that 0%, zero down. When we moved into my house, it was $20,000 to furnish the house. I'm sure it's a hell of a lot more now. People go put that on there. That's going to screw up their loan,
Well, but it's like if you took out like a credit card at the place that you're buying things, now that's going to hit your credit report. Do you know what I mean? Not just like the liability piece, but like also your credit score. And I don't think people realize this, but like when you're shopping for a mortgage, like depending on the scenario, like when you're shopping for mortgages, let's say you're shopping with like 15 different lenders in the matter of like 2 weeks, on the credit report side, I believe it's only seen as like one inquiry because the credit bureaus know that you're shopping for a mortgage. But if you take out a credit card, that is an ongoing revolving line of credit. There is no end in sight for that. So you're actually taking a bigger hit against your credit score doing that versus even shopping for a mortgage, which is pretty nuts.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So like when people take out credit cards like mid-transaction, I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus, what are you doing? But
you mentioned if somebody loses their job, you can work through that. What do you do if somebody is already under contract for a house and they lose their job? How do you work through that?
If they lose their job, literally it's that come to Jesus moment of let's find you another job that's equal to what you're working, to the same field, that similar salary or pay or whatever it is going to be. And then we figure out a way to get the like a letter of like commitment from the employer of like, hey, this person is supposed to start this day. And then like basically underwriting sees it as like continued income, like at a new job. But we do need that letter from the employer of saying like, hey, listen, like here's the commitment letter that this person is going to start on this day. And this is their salary. If they're going to have a bonus, whatever else it might be. And we just factor it all in and keep it moving. I mean, worst case scenarios, like if somebody got hurt on a job, let's say, I mean, sometimes you're like, let's rearrange this transaction. Like, are there any other co-buyers that we can think of? Like maybe we have to use somebody else's income in a way that we didn't normally put it. There's a lot of different workarounds, but ultimately, like usually when people either quit their job or they got fired, the best, quickest solution is finding a similar job and then getting that letter of employment from the new employer. Yeah.
Back to the part where you want to know right away, like, so I'm of the beliefs in my business where I deliver bad news immediately.
Yep.
Right. Because whatever it is, putting it off until tomorrow doesn't do any good. Right.
Makes it worse. Yep.
Yeah. So as a listing agent, that happened to me recently. And unfortunately, it was a lender. I think it was a lender that sat on it. But if your buyer lost their job, like, you got to tell me right away. We've got people's lives in our hands. Like there's people, This guy's relocating with 2 kids around Christmas. Like, you've got to tell me if Santa's going to come at this house or if Santa's coming at that house, because that's a real thing that people are going through. And if you're just going to sit on the information that you quit your job, lost your job, you're affecting other people, not just professionals. I mean, we'll sell another house, but if you're dealing with a seller, that's going to be their big move. And it's right around any time of year, but especially around the holidays. Like, let this guy know if his house is going back on the market or if he's going to be moving by Christmas. Like,
right.
I hate, like, is Santa going to come? Like, what do you mean is Santa going to come? Santa's going to come somewhere. But if you're just upfront right away, then everybody that knows what to do can start to do the things we know what to do.
Yeah. Correct. I actually had one where someone did lose their job 3 days before closing. We were supposed to close on like a Monday. She lost her job on like a Friday, but she just picked up her kids, left and went to Florida and never came back. No, she had actually moved her stuff into, this was one of my last flip. She had moved her stuff into my house. I didn't give them permission to do that, but I gave them permission to bring a truckload of stuff and put it in the garage. They literally moved everything into the house. And then when she lost her job, she didn't even, I was like, so what happens? Like, she lost her $10,000 deposit. I sold all her stuff. She released it. She's like, I'm not coming back. Nope. I just couldn't believe it. And I had to put it back on the market, and it was nuts.
Wow. That's crazy. I know that's the things that they don't talk about in real estate. Like, when those things do go down, like, how does the poor listing agent, like, pick up the slack and like move things forward and keep the ball rolling for like the sellers or whomever it is, even if it's your own personal flip or whatever you're doing. I mean, I I feel like most of the public think like, oh, we're just going to throw a sign in front of this house and it's just going to go up for sale and we're going to get some offers and we're going to call it a day. Not
You know,
nearly near the
not
case.
not everybody's built for the difficult conversations, and
Truly.
of course they, especially if there were multiple offers to pick from, right? And
Mhm.
you gave guidance, like of course that buyer that lost his job is my fault because I
Right.
could tell from his sales agreement that he was about to lose his job. Like, you know, we're not doing, but having those difficult conversations, I feel like that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, anybody can do a grade A borrower on a mint house that's like new construction. Like we could all do that. You know, it's when you got to
Sure.
deliver some bad news. Like, can you do it in a way that maintains the relationship and still helps the client reach their goals, whatever those goals are on either side?
Well said. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that having good partners and people that you can have those candid conversations with and nipping things in the bud as soon as they are things and just finding solutions as quickly as you possibly can and letting all parties involved know what's going on. Um, in lending, I would say most things, like 99% of the time, they will work themselves out. And you don't want to spook people before there's actually a problem if in fact you can come up with a solution. So like if somebody loses their job, for instance, if we're going to go back to that example, if someone tells me that or if it comes up as soon as I'm told that, like I'm like, all right, so like what's the plan here? Like, do you have a backup plan? Like how can we rearrange this? So if in fact there's a way to rearrange it and the income is still good and it's still vetted and everything's good to go, I'm not even going to really tell anybody because it's like it's not a problem anymore. You know what I mean? But if there's like a bigger like situation here where we can't find a solution and it's been like a little like not a little while, I shouldn't say that, but like if it's like a real thing, like we can't like work our way around this, of course. I'm not gonna let the clock run out and like screw everybody and all parties involved. Like to me that's the
Matter of
best way to
fact,
build relationships.
the relationship between lender and realtor, it's like, listen, man, don't tell me unless I need to know.
Right.
Like if you're
Exactly.
switching program because something fishy happened on the back end, like don't tell me. Just
Yep.
just get the closing table. Like I feel like I keep secrets all the time. Like, is this important? Is
Right.
this going to work itself out? Am I going to give somebody a heart attack over something frivolous? You know, it's
Exactly.
that's the other. If you change from a conventional and FHA, that's one thing. But if the guy's changing his down payment from 25% to 20, do not tell me. I don't
Right.
care.
Right.
I don't want to tell my client. Elias,
Yeah, I
what do you
mean,
got?
I think we're ready for another topic that Ken can give us another crazy story.
um I mean honestly, like in lending, I don't think there's like
Tell me this. I'll help
what's
you.
that?
I'll prompt you.
Sure.
Tell me tell me about appraisals. Tell me about an appraiser that jammed you up.
An appraisal
Don't
is
tell me
jammed
you
me
haven't
up.
been jammed up by an appraiser.
No, I mean you generally get the normal things, right? But like there was one and it was just an old house. And so there was extensive exterior work that needed to be done to close the deal. But I mean, it's just being realistic about your buyers and like the loan type and like what could potentially come up, even from like eyesight of looking at a property. And you kind of just like mentally prepare for that, them for that like ahead of time. But I mean, they had to do like shingles, like exterior, and like some appraisers like they'll go out and like there's things that I'll see and I'm like, that's definitely going to come up, and then they don't, and then I'm always like shocked by that. And you hope to God that they don't like that the appraiser. I hate to say this, but like you hope to God that the appraiser isn't like the deal killer of the century. You know what I mean? And that they're going to be like, oh well, here's a problem, and then if we look even further, oh by the way, this entire beam is rotted out, and we're going to have to redo this, that, and the other thing. So like the older homes always make me a little bit nervous, but most of the time it's like a handrail here and there, some chipping, peeling paint that they gotta like look over, but like nothing that's like been insane. Me and Holly actually had one, and I didn't know how an underwriter was going to take any of this. It was a property where there was a single family home and then there was an old mobile home on it, and we were like, how is and it was an FHA loan, and we were trying to think to ourselves like, is the underwriter going to flag that as like part of the house? And they ended up saying that like because of like the year on it, and like it just became a non-issue.
Yeah,
But
it just
there's
became considered just another building on the property that was no value.
right.
Hmm. Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different things. I mean, I would still say I'm like somewhat green, you could call me, into the field, but I've had when that did come up, they were like 20-year loan officers. They're like, hey, Ken, like, let me know how that goes down because I've never even come across that. You know what I mean?
But
So there's all sorts of different things.
I
Yeah.
had an appraiser undervalue a property on me. And so we were under contract for like 325. And he came in at value. Now, looking through the appraisal, his appraisal should have showed like 310. Like I looked at all his numbers and stuff, but he came in at like 300. And I'm like, that's not gonna fly. Then like I had to go back out with him. I'm like, you missed a bathroom. You didn't account for the fact that the house had been completely gutted and remodeled. Like he came back up, he's like, no, I'm not changing the value. He was using houses that were like 2 miles away. So I ended up telling them, like, I said, listen, for these reasons, we should at least be here for the value. And we got it thrown out and got another appraiser to come in. The valued it at 340.
Wow.
Right? Like appraisers can be hit or miss.
Well, it's still an opinion of value. My thing is especially when we're in a hot market, and they know that we've got 15 offers on a listing, like, I know you have to protect the bank and you have to protect the loan, but the value is what the public says it is, you know? And if you got a buyer that wants to buy a house that's missing a handrail on 2 steps, is it really a safety issue? Is it really? Or are you just being a ball breaker? You know, like, I understand you
That's
guys.
one way to put it. Yeah.
You know, like, is it too all right? So if we got rid of we put 2 pieces of two 2x4s in to make a handrail, right? It's me and 4 screws and 3 pieces of wood. I put a handrail in, you take a picture, you know I'm gonna rip it up as soon as you leave. Like, you're doing it just to what? To get another fee for coming out there? Like, at some point it's like they want to be judge and jury, and you can have 3 appraisers look at a property, we all know this, and come up with 3 different values and 3 different remedies for 3 different things that is wrong. And it's like, and you guys wonder why they're obsolete, and you wonder why so many times now we're just going to an algorithm that's just going to spit out a value. And it's because if your human judgment is going to be so inconsistent, then we might as well go with something where we're all playing on the same field. And and you know, you see the number of appraisers just dropping down, the amount of work they're getting is dropping down.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it has to do with that. The one that gets me is the peeling paint. I'm like, I had one guy had to paint his whole pool deck. Like, you feel bad for some of these people. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, there's not a lot of money in the kitty, and here we got to go paint a pool deck. And it's like, you know, the buyers saw the pool deck was falling down. They're probably going to knock it down in 5 minutes, and you're going to have them paint it just so he can throw money out the window.
right.
You know,
I've been there painting them myself because I had a client where they had peeling paint show up. I'm over there on my ladder. I went and bought a paint sprayer because I mean it was like peeling, and I was like, I didn't want to touch it like so that it wouldn't fall down. Like, I don't know. I've had to do it. It is annoying.
It is. I'll tell you, and I've got 2 stories that kind of go together. One, me and a lender painted some guy's fence to get the loan approved. Right. So it was right on a main road too. It was hot as heck that day on Dean Street in Smithfield. We paint the whole fence. The deal closes. Like a week or 2 later, I drive by on my way to some whatever. I didn't drive by the house on purpose, but it was on my path, and the fence was gone.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, I gave up my whole freaking day to paint this stupid picket fence, and it's gone. Right.
But you got the deal closed.
I got the deal closed. When I sold my house, right? The last one I sold, personal residence, there was a beehive in the tree. This isn't the appraiser. This is the home inspection. There was a beehive in the tree. We closed August like 28th. If you want to remedy a beehive, you can't do it from September 1st on. You can't spray for bees, which I didn't know until this happened.
Like, that's illegal?
Yeah, the pest companies won't spray for bees after September 1st.
Huh.
I guess
I did not know that.
Yeah,
right?
see, we're here teaching people on the Legit Real Estate Podcast. So anyway, this guy wants me to get this beehive taken down. Of course, that's a production. It was like an $800 production. Now, when you're moving, $800 is not something you want to spend on the old house. Like, once you've determined you're moving, it's like, okay, I'm not spending more here. If I have $800, it's going to be to go buy something pretty for the new house. Okay. We take down the beehive. You know that tree is gone, right? You know they cut the tree down as soon as they moved in. It's like, you sons of bitches. I would have been cheaper for me to cut the tree down. You told me you wanted the tree, get rid of the beehive, and yeah, drive by it. Jackson Avenue in Johnston. You'll see the stump. They cut down my tree.
Fun things. Ken and I did have another crazy thing happen on that transaction. That was a real tough transaction. I was actually helping one of my tenants buy a house with his dad, and the people we were buying it from was the sleazy we buy houses for cash people. Like, you see the billboards, and like they're just like, these people weren't even from the area. They were just, I don't know, California or something. And they were so shady, and there were tenants in both the mobile home and the house part. The tenant would not let us in to do any of the work that the appraiser. We had to install a railing for the appraiser. She wouldn't let us do the inspection for the well. Like, she was just horrendous with letting us get in there. So we finally, she moves out, and then we go in to install the railing, and then we found that the water wasn't working, and then we had to have them try to get the water up and running. But these people were like, and the agent, I will say, was one of the agents that I'm just like, really? How do you even have a license? Like, I was like, he wasn't communicating at all. Like, I would tell him something, I would put something in writing, and then he would ask me a question, exactly what I like he didn't understand English.
I don't mean to laugh, Ollie. I lived through that with you, and I was just like, man, oh man, like, Lord Jesus, deliver me from whatever this is. Like, this is crazy.
It was nuts. Then we get to like the day of closing, and we the attorney closed their office. They're like, yeah, we're not doing closed. We were supposed to close that day, and we weren't able to close because I found the water like not working. I was like, we got to get this fixed. And we're like, okay, well, we'll close on Monday then. They're like, well, we just shut down shop. We don't exist anymore. Like, they didn't, like, nope, sorry, we closed our doors.
Yeah,
like,
little heads up would have been nice.
Yes.
Anything.
Get out of here.
They're like, well, we didn't tell you. They're like, we didn't tell you because we thought we were closing today. So now they had to move the file to another attorney's office, and we got delayed another like 2 days because they had to like get the files and understand what was going on. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
And we're worried about consumers being upfront. Never mind attorneys, who are supposed to be the
right
level of professionalism.
It's crazy. I feel like in real estate, if it's not one thing, it's 12 others all the time. And it's so crazy too, because like I wouldn't call them easy deals, but like the deals that just like they go normal. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even really remember those ones as much because you're just like, oh, like all the other ones that like had something crazy like this one, those are the ones you do remember, or the ones that you like really changed somebody's life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you saved the day, you saved these people didn't have a home, or they would have been homeless, or this, that, or the other thing. When you really come through and help people, those are the stories that kind of stick out. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like investors, first-time home buyers, like it's always a very good feeling. But then like the ones that go normal, you're just like, whatever, like next. But the ones like this, you're just like, what could possibly else happen? Like, this is insane.
You know, another way to put it, some of them are just business. You know, some people, if you're a single guy, you're selling your house to go retire in Florida, and all you're trying to do is get me in your house 2-3 times for an open house, make the most money you can, and I'm never going to hear from you again. Cool. Right. But when you're walking through with buyers and the kids are picking out their bedrooms, to me, that's still my favorite part of the whole business is when the kids are like so excited, like, you know, I'm going to paint this one pink, Dad, and you know, it's so exciting, as opposed to even investors, like, whatever, man, we're just doing balance sheet stuff. Right. My investors, when you deal with investors a lot, there's no emotion involved, like literally none. Like, they're not even happy to get the deal. It's like, whatever. Oh, good. I got this new project. Awesome. I still can't find help. But when you got the kids picking out bedrooms, or, you know, they never had a pool and now they have a pool, and you see that joy, that's really, really cool.
Yeah. I will say that one, it did end up working out well when we finally got to closing. Like, but that was one of those ones where I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like, when I say the sellers were just, one of the examples, like, so we did the septic inspection, right? And it needed to be pumped. In the state of Connecticut, the seller is supposed to pump the septic. but they didn't. And I had it all ready to line up. They're like, no, we'll take care of it after. And then we're getting to closing, getting closer. I was like, you got to pump the septic. And they're like, no, we don't. I'm like, yeah, you do. It's in the contract. You're supposed to do it. And we get to closing. I couldn't get an answer from anybody on anything. And then we were fighting to the last second. I'm like, well, now we need a credit for it. And they're like, it was just between the agent, the sellers, it was terrible. I'm so glad we finally got to closing. And I thought Ken and his processor were gonna like kill me by the end of this one.
Honestly, like if to me that's not even like, I don't know. Like that was crazy, but that's not like a level 10 situation in my eyes. Like a level 10 situation is like when you have like I deal with a lot of for sale by owners, and oftentimes it's landlord selling the property to the tenant. And in those scenarios, like where like the tenants were not foreseeing like even having to like be able to get financing to do financing because it's so sudden all of a sudden, like people that have been living in their homes for like 15 years, and then all of a sudden the landlord's like, yep, here's your 30-day notice, like I'm selling the property, like figure it out, like or get out. There's so many different scenarios like that where I'm like, oh my gosh, now it's like gun to your head. Like we have to find solutions for these people stat. Like to me, that's way more high pressure than like, sure, like people suck at communicating and like we're just trying to get this thing to the finish table and like X, Y, and Z can go wrong, but ultimately it's going to get there. To me, I'm like, those are like the more like,
in that scenario,
when it closes.
To me, that's cool when the tenant is buying it off the owner because they're going to do what you say because their backs against the wall too. So if you ask for a document, you're getting that document like by lunch.
1,000%. Yep.
You ask them for this, we're going to get this. A challenge is when the tenant doesn't cooperate, and like that's whether they're staying or not. I laugh when they don't cooperate, and then they want me as the new owner to keep them. It's like, well, I just saw your behavior.
Yeah,
you let me in there to do a home inspection. Now you want me to stick around. You want to stick around for another year, but when the tenants have no incentive, they don't keep the place clean. They don't do the dishes. They don't get ready for showings. They never want to leave during the showing. Holly will tell you, we've had this conversation where you got a 2-bedroom apartment and the tenant's sitting there on the couch, like smoking a joint. I had one where the guy had a pile of weed on the like the coffee stand. And it's like, you couldn't clean up the weed. I got kids coming through here. But at least in that situation, when the tenant's buying off the owner and you say, listen, I need this, and this tax return, like God knows how they find it, but they sure do find it.
They absolutely do. And I mean, it's those families that really deserve a home and they don't deserve like what the landlord's doing. Like they're just like, you know what I mean? I feel like when you're going to sell, usually you should like let your tenants know like, hey, this is the game plan, not all of a sudden like, hey, like, by the way, 4 weeks, let's go. Like that's crazy. You know what I mean? And when you can save the deal for those people, those are again the ones that you do remember because you really differently made a difference in people's lives, you know?
I've had them where the seller doesn't want me to put a sign up or anything because they don't want the tenants to know.
Oh, that's shitty. Jesus.
And it's like, dude, well, first of all, someone's going to want to see inside the second floor. Like, we can't just do this behind them. And well, what if they know they might not pay the rent? Well, okay, maybe, but you're not going to be able to sell the house without these people knowing unless you're selling it to your brother. Like, unless you're just pushing paper, because otherwise someone's going to want to see this damn thing. And,
no, you need to keep it on the up and up. I just went to go look at a house for one of my clients the other day, and I went into the tenant's apartment and I was like, yeah, my client said you're going to be moving out. She's like, yeah. She's like, if she's selling it, she's like, I'm not staying around. I'm not dealing with the new owner. I don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, geez, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the new owner is going to like be bad or kick you out or anything. And she's like, nope, not taking any chances. I was like, okay.
All righty. But you know, the other move that the new owner generally will do is tell all the tenants actually, a friend of mine, he just moved next door to me. Well, kind of next door. But he was upstairs in a 2-family and the owner bought it and said, you can stay. We want to keep the tenant. But in the meantime, they're working behind the scenes to get someone else in there. So they're like, you can stay, but you don't have to sign a lease. That's like your red flag. Like you're out the door. They needed your old lease for the financing. They want your month's rent because they don't have any money when they bought the house. And then the second they can get you out the door, they can't. To me, I feel like that's just like being a shady human. Yeah. Yeah, not a fan of
Couldn't agree with you more. I had
Well, that's why the tenant was nervous. She's like, yeah, we the last time somebody bought the house, they took our rent and then kicked us out. And I was like, well, that's not how we do things. I said, you know, my tenant is got morals and I do too. I'm like, we do estoppels, so we make sure that the next person knows what your security deposit is, what you paid for rent, like what, you know, we make sure that you're all set. But she got burned, and it's sad what people will do to people that are they don't know how to handle it.
Crazy.
I got a heartbreaking one. There was it was a referral from another client, and it was a multifamily property, and they had a rent to own agreement, and these people were pretty the tenants were like on top of their stuff. I was kind of impressed by them, honestly, and they knew everything backwards and forwards, but the landlord was basically trying to renege on the rent to own agreement and sell it out from underneath them. And here's the big kicker. Everyone in the house, all the tenants, they're all visually impaired. They're all blind.
Oh my God.
So this guy living in Florida at the time was trying to sell this house out from underneath them, and like was like basically harassing them with having realtors stop by to like put on open house signs. They had done so much work on this property, and they were like the most incredible people like ever, and like working with them was like amazing to help them like save this this home for them and like to go through like the proper legal channels. But I was like, listen, there's no way that this guy is selling this house from underneath you, especially in a state like Massachusetts. Like there's so many tenant laws that will never let this thing see the light of day. So like that to me was like a moral victory. But like it is really insane what people will do or try to get away with and trying to
It's when
just make a dollar. Like it's crazy.
it happens when you stop seeing everybody as people and you see them as like a line on a spreadsheet. You know,
Right?
it can happen to us very easily too. Like if I stop looking at all these files that are to my right, I'm blurred out because I got a mess behind me with Christmas. But all these files over here, those are all people.
You're
Like
right.
when they just look like files and you're just in and out, and they're just a file, then that's when you can fall victim to some things, right? Because every one of those files is like, that's like some woman's like house, you know, and you got to keep that in mind. Kenny, we are running out of time. Can you tell the people where to find you, how to find you, please?
Yeah, you can Google me, Ken Tessitore, Loan Depot. My phone number is 508-733-0764. Feel free to Google me, look me up. I'm sure I can add my credentials somewhere on here for you guys. But thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Hey, listen, thanks for coming. It added some life to what we're doing. Holly, how can the people find us?
And I will add Kenny's information into our wherever we put ours. So we are the Legit Real Estate Podcast. So we are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, where you know, somebody actually told me recently that we were not on the Apple thing. I have to fix that, figure that out. But wherever you guys want to see us, let us know. But YouTube is great for the video aspect, and then all the other podcasts. I know Amazon, we're on there because that's where I listen to it. And like I said, I'll put Kenny's information into the podcast notes. And then we want more guests. I think this is fun. It's a lot more fun than just talking to each other and stuff. So if you are interested, please reach out to us, and you can reach us at the legit real estate podcast at gmail.com. Which I got to put all that in the notes for the show and everything too. But thank you guys very much. Thank you, Kenny. It was great talking.
Absolutely.
You guys have a great day.